Who are we voting for? Meet the candidates. Who Are We Voting For was created so we could understand who the candidates are and what they are about. This is not an endorsement for any candidate. This is for the voter to be more educated about who we're voting for.
My name is Robert Daniel Lavelle. I'm a Pittsburgh City Councilman serving District 6 in the city of Pittsburgh. Again, my name is Robert Daniel Lavelle. I was born and raised in the Hill District, the child of Phyllis Lavelle and Robert M. Lavelle. Always had a fantastic childhood growing up. My grandparents were very active in my life, had a very active family around me, many friends, grew up through the Boy Scout system. My father was my Boy Scout master for at least a decade. It was something I really enjoyed. One interesting thing about my name actually is that people always assume that I'm a third or a fourth, but that's actually not the case. My grandfather's name was Robert Roosevelt Lavelle, and then my father's name is Robert Moore Lavelle. Moore is my grandmother's maiden name, which is how he got his middle name. And my full name is Robert Daniel Lavelle, and Daniel is my mother's maiden name, which is how I got my middle name. So we actually all have different middle names, and interestingly enough, we decided to carry on that tradition. I'm now a father. I have 2 children. My daughter, Sanaya Jacqueline Evelyn Lavelle, is actually turning 14 in 2 days. And then my son just turned 12, and his name is Robert Elijah Riley Lavelle. And it was important actually to my wife to carry that tradition. Her maiden name is Riley, which is how my son now has his middle name. So it also depends on how you know me, depends on what name you actually call me. So interestingly enough, I went to school in 1st grade as Daniel. I was signed up to go to school as Daniel, but I had a teacher that was originally from France, and she pronounced my name Danielle. And so I told her I didn't like that, and I knew I had another name, so I told her my name was Robert. So from then on, if you've ever known me from 1st grade through college, you know me as Robert, or as most of my friends call me Rob. But if you know me from my family always called me Daniel. And so depending on how you know me is depending on what you actually call me. My grandparents actually call me Robert Daniel. And my son now has the same problem. So I love my job, I love my work, but one thing I also love to do, I love to fish. That's how I get away from things. It's a lesson I learned from my great uncle, and then my uncle Jack Daniel, my mother's brother, took me first fishing when I think I was in 6th grade. And I've been hooked ever since. Any chance I get, I go away. And I now do it with my kids. I was actually, for spring break this year, we went away fishing. We went down to South Carolina and did some fishing. And my daughter's first fish, I have a picture of her when she was 1 year old, catching her first fish. So that's something I just love to do. In addition to that, I love to read. I love music. So if you're ever around me, there's probably music going in some capacity.
What are your skills to run for District 6 City Council seat in the city of Pittsburgh? Take 2 and 5, 4.
My greatest skill is the fact that I currently serve in the position. I'm currently serving in my 4th term. When I first came into City Council, I was the chair of Land Use and Economic Development Committee, which really deals with economic development across our city. It deals with land use issues. And so I spent the first 4 years getting a really good working knowledge of how that functions. It also allowed me to join the Urban Redevelopment Authority Board, where I serve as vice chair currently. And the Urban Redevelopment Authority Board is where all our economic development occurs throughout the city of Pittsburgh. And so that becomes really critical. In addition to that, I also served as the public safety chair. And so working with fire, working with our police department, working with our EMS department, I began to have a really hands-on understanding of how public safety functions. I worked on a number of bills as public safety chair to begin drawing down and lessening violence within our city. I'm very proud that currently we've actually are at our lowest mark for homicides. Actually last year, no teen between 13 and 17 was murdered, which is the first time in over a decade, I believe. And so as public safety chair, I also work to help create the Stop the Violence Trust Fund, which puts dollars into the hands of those doing crime prevention work, working with youth that are at risk. And so that's also one of my skills. I also served as the finance chair for council for years. So that gave me an intimate working knowledge of our budget and really understanding dollars in, dollars out, obviously, but understanding our tax system, understanding where and how we have to prioritize our resources and what that looks like, managing what we call a funding cliff, and managing our debt as a city. I also led efforts to take out affordable housing bonds, working with Mayor Gainey at the time, to bring additional resources in order to be able to pay for things like affordable housing. Currently, I'm the president of City Council, and so that also serves as a skill set. To be able to manage and work with all my colleagues becomes very critical, because now it's no longer solely about my district, but rather what is the true good of all the city of Pittsburgh. I would also say one of my skill sets is being able to work with people. A few years ago, I was asked what's my greatest accomplishment on City Council. And at the time, I said it was getting the Affordable Housing Trust Fund passed and $10 million allocated annually for 12 years. What my chief of staff reminded me is that I've never lost a bill, meaning any bill that I've sponsored has gotten passed. And historically, when I've railed against a bill, then it normally doesn't get passed or gets passed in a different form. And I think that speaks to my ability to both legislate effectively, but also compromise and be pragmatic and work with people to get something accomplished. I'm running for re-election simply because my job is not done. When I first decided to run for re-election, it was actually after sitting in my grandfather's living room. One day, this is when the currently I believe it's called PPG Arena was being built. And I was watching the arena being built. The old Civic Arena was still on site. And I saw no people of color working on that development. And I was in my grandfather's room, sort of fussing and complaining and having a very long diatribe about all that was wrong and all that needed to be changed and all that could be better. And after my long diatribe, he effectively said to me, well, if you think you know so much, go do something about it. And so with that, I decided to run for office myself. But the job is not done, unfortunately. When I first ran for office, the Civic Arena was still standing. And the redevelopment of the Lower Hill was one of the achievements that I looked upon the greatest. I really wanted to see the Lower Hill redeveloped, because what I was trying to do was use that development to economically and socially uplift both the greater Middle Hill District and the Upper Hill District. And so first and foremost, I had to lead the fight to actually have the arena torn down. And I can remember sitting with the CEO at the time, David Morehouse, at the Pittsburgh Penguins, and saying, hey, look, the Civic Arena is going to be nominated to be a historical structure. I will absolutely lead the fight against it to have it demolished, but you have to agree that through this Lower Hill redevelopment, you will help me create Black wealth, because I currently represent a neighborhood that has an average income of $18,000. And we agreed to that. Now, he then said, well, what exactly does that mean? I said, I don't know. I said, I'll get back to you. And eventually I went to people I thought were much smarter than I, and we began to put together a plan that today we commonly call the CSIP, which is Community Collaboration Implementation Plan for the Lower Hill redevelopment site. And 10 years later, we now have the F&B Tower that has been developed on that site. We currently have the Live Nation development that is currently being developed on that site. But there's more to be done. And both of those developments have absolutely helped the Greater Hill District. The F&B Tower has created the Greater Hill District Neighborhood Reinvestment Fund, which we actually just hired someone to manage, where we have $7 million to spend in the community to directly benefit residents themselves. And there are other benefits that have come from the development. But again, the job's simply not done. I'm proud of the work I've done on council. I'm proud of the many accomplishments. I'm proud of my legislative record. But as long as there are people who have less than I, as long as there are people who are not socially and economically thriving in our city, there's more work to be done. So one of the most interesting things about this job and this position is that you come into it with an idea of what you want to accomplish. And then you quickly learn that you represent on average about 33,000 people per district in the city of Pittsburgh. So as I use that as an example to say, when I first came into office, I really wanted to work on sort of economic development issues. But the very first piece of legislation I ever worked on was around picking up trash in downtown Pittsburgh. And that was only because we got a call one day from a doctor who said, hey, look, I live downtown, and around 2 or 3 in the morning, I hear beep, beep, beep every single night. And he says, but at 5 in the morning, I have to wake up to go perform surgery at UPMC. And this is a problem. And it was never an issue I thought was going to be an issue, but it was an issue for residents. And what we discovered was that downtown Pittsburgh had always been zoned commercial. So different than in Shady Side or in the Hill District or in Manchester, where there's rules about when garbage trucks can come and pick up trash because you don't want to be disturbing people at night. They didn't have those rules downtown. And that's right when more residents were beginning to move into downtown. And so we literally had to begin working with the garbage truck haulers to begin figuring out how to zone appropriately where you could and could not pick up. We didn't have a definition of a residential building for downtown Pittsburgh. So we literally had to create new terms, new definitions, and work on these sort of issues. And that literally became my first piece of legislation, which was to how to rezone downtown so that trash could be picked up and not disturb residents, but at the same time be able to service the hotels and all the commercial buildings. Another similar example at the time, I was working on a bill called the Responsible Banking Act, which the basic idea was if a bank, every year the city gives banks $500 million to hold, and obviously the banks earn interest on those, and they then disperse those dollars out into the community. My argument was, well, if you can't show me the loans that you're sending to Black families, if you can't show me the small minority-owned businesses that you're assisting with these dollars, why am I giving you my resources? And so we began working on a bill to address that sort of issue. But at the same time, I had residents in downtown saying, there's nowhere for me to play with my dog. Again, I love dogs, but I don't own a dog, but it was never something that I would necessarily care about. But it was important to them. So we literally began scouring downtown trying to figure out where can we put a dog park. And currently there's a little small dog park across from Kappa. And so those are the sort of issues that I really come to appreciate, that yes, there's what I want to achieve, but then there's all the individuals that I actually represent, and I have to service their needs. And I believe I've done that well over the years. People should vote for me because District 6 is absolutely moving in the right direction. If I start at the furthest part of my district going east in Oakland, Oakland is our third largest business district within the state of Pennsylvania. We have more housing being developed there right now. Right now, we actually have on Forbes Avenue coming into Oakland an affordable housing development that is being developed there now, and we've been making tremendous progress there. If you come into the Hill District, one of the things when I first took office, the Hill District said they wanted was a full-service grocery store, and it took me 3 years, and we eventually delivered the Shop and Save. Unfortunately, the Shop and Save was not able to survive, and so we then regathered and we opened up Salem's Market on Center Avenue. Salem's lasted about a year, and we're recalibrating and going to be reopening that store back up soon. We're also working to redevelop Center Avenue as our business corridor. We currently have about 4 developments underway. The New Granada is currently being converted. That's going to be viable housing. I mentioned that we have the Live Nation deal happening on the Lower Hill site. That is going to directly contribute to the New Granada Theater because Live Nation has agreed to help program the New Granada Theater once it is opened. They're also financially supporting it, so that's going to be advantageous for our community. In the Upper Hill District, we are renovating homes for affordable home ownership opportunities, working through the URA and PHDC. We also have the Choice neighborhood that is currently underway for the redevelopment of all of Bedford dwellings in the Hill District. We're currently about to finish up phase 1, which is also on the old former Reed Roberts site. We have 110 units of new housing there that is being developed. Further down from that, we have what is called City's Edge, which is at 5th and Dinwiddie, which is about another 60 so units of affordable housing. But in total, we have about 800 planned for the Hill District community. And so again, we've started, but we're not done. If we go into downtown, which is also part of my district, working with the mayor, working with our tremendous governor, and working with many others, it was recently announced towards the end of last year that we're going to be investing $600 million into downtown. We are working to do conversions of old office buildings to residential buildings. We have the historic golf tower that is currently being renovated as we speak. We have the Arts Landing that is under construction. We have Old Market Square, which is also getting a facelift. So we have a lot of positive activity in downtown. And then if we come over to the north side, we're also working to renovate old Allegheny dwellings on the north side, which is part of the Choice Neighborhoods program. We're working to redevelop and bring new housing into Charles Street. We're working on a plan to really help bolster and build out Manchester along with the Chateau neighborhood. The Chateau plan, which is dubbed Esplanade, is going to spur off hundreds of millions of dollars for us to actually then spend in Manchester to do more affordable housing there and invest in that community. So again, we made a lot of progress. I'm also proud of the work I've done on crime prevention work, and crime is down. And so we're moving in the right direction, but the job is not done, and I'm here to finish it.